Welcome back. Our question today is more on the why does God allow suffering? This time I want to get into more of physical suffering, like why does God allow it, spiritual suffering, and what's the purpose? It's very easy for us to look at all suffering as something that's bad. And I don't think anyone ever wants suffering just for suffering's sake. That doesn't make sense. In the world we live in, it's a fallen world, sinful world, evil is in it, and there is suffering. But then what is God's ultimate plan for us? And so sometimes we look at it just from our own perspective that suffering hurts us, and it does. But if we try to step back for a moment and we look at it from God's perspective, God is ultimately looking out for our best interest for eternity, not just in this life, but in heaven. He wants us to be in heaven with Him permanently for eternity. And so that changes things a bit in that if He can help us during this life to understand that evil and sin is bad and that we can turn to the good and trust Him, that we can be with Him for eternity, then even if we have to suffer a little bit to learn that lesson, then He'll allow it for our longer term good. So He'll allow suffering for a time so that we can learn from it and turn to Him so that we can be with Him for eternity in heaven. So for example, let's say, and this is a common question that comes up, like why did this young child die early when they were young? Like why did they have suffering? Why did they die when they were young? And so often we are looking at it from our perspective, maybe someone that we lost, or even if we didn't, it's like it's a loss to us in this world, in our life, whether we live 80 to 100 years, like we don't have that person with us, so there is suffering and we feel the loss, and that's a genuine loss. There's no doubt there's suffering there. But looking at it from God's perspective, a young child, often up until, let's say, the age 7 or 8 years old, a young child, for example, may not even know what sin is yet. And so if they don't even know what sin is yet, they haven't committed it purposefully. If you look at it from a point of eternity, if their life in this world ended right then they're guaranteed to be in heaven because they haven't committed any sin yet to be apart from God. And so really, if you think about it from the perspective of heaven, it's almost better if you died when you were young without any sin. It's almost like us who are older and we've committed a lot of sin, it's harder for us. So we shouldn't feel bad about young people that have lost their lives. We should worry more about older people who are still alive, who still have the possibility of turning away from God. Now I know that doesn't help people who've lost someone, and I don't mean it that way at all, because there is a loss, and that'll be healed in time. When we see them in heaven, it's going to be an incredible joy to see them again. And so that's God's goodness. He's helping them then, and He's going to be helping us later. So ultimately, you see how God is really looking out for our best interests for eternity, for us and our loved ones. And so if He can intervene and end our lives at the right moment, He can bring more people into heaven. Who knows? Maybe this person, maybe if they had lived their whole lives, maybe at this point, maybe they would turn away from God And so he's all knowing, and he can see he's I am. He called himself I am. So he's past, present, future. He knows, even though we all have our free will, it doesn't take away our free will. But he can see, like, okay, well, this person maybe later would have turned away. Well, if they're really sick now, then I'll take them, and then they're going to be with God in heaven for eternity. So that's just an explanation of how when young people suffer and die, it's not all bad, because they're more likely to be in heaven than some of us if we died right now. So I know there's a common question people have: why does God allow young people to die and suffer? And so I think a lot of people blame God when he's really there to help. And even in the suffering that we feel at the loss of losing someone, then that's really the best time to turn to God and ask him to help, because he's loving, he's caring, he wants us to be with him, and he'll take care of us. Whereas if we don't have God and we try to go through suffering on our own, it's not good. It can lead to despair, hopelessness, depression, all kinds of bad things, because there's nothing there to help us. The devil, he's not going to help us at all. He wants us to stay in this state of despair and depression and stay there forever. And then one day we die, and if we were apart from God, it's difficult. So we want to turn to God and trust him.